Hello, graduates. Hello, families. Hello, colleagues. I'm Charlotte Sussman. I'm the current chair of the English department, and it's such a pleasure to see you all here today. The English faculty is honored to share this important moment of transition with our graduating seniors and with their families and loved ones. As it happens, my older son is also graduating from college next weekend, so I may be able to guess what the parents and other family members here might be feeling today. A bit of whiplash at the speed with which such a tiny creature who might have been interested in puddles or trucks or dinosaurs has become not just independent, but also deeply reflective and articulate about themselves and the world around them. Able to do so much and to go so far. You might feel a little worried about what they'll do next in this challenging world that we all inhabit, but I expect that most of the time you're just enjoying getting to know the thoughtful, creative, funny, insightful, and independent person your child has become. And maybe you're trying not to cry. That's a struggle I don't think I'm gonna win. The pleasure of getting to know your children is something we've been grateful to experience for the past 4 years. It's an open secret about teaching that we learn as much from our students as they learn from us. You can see from the graduation program the range of subjects in which they've done original research and the impressive variety of creative writing projects they've undertaken. And that list only scratches the surface of the papers they've written on Shakespeare and Zora Neale Hurston, on literature's relationship to the environment and its relationship to existentialist philosophy. I myself teach literature that was written a very long time ago in the 18th and 19th centuries, but it's no cliche to say that it comes alive in surprising ways every time that I teach it. The alchemy of literature and the opportunity to see familiar characters through the eyes of new readers has made Robinson Crusoe or Elizabeth Bennet's choices seem very different now than they did when I started teaching. Duke is both a liberal arts college and a vast research enterprise with schools of law, of medicine, and public policy, among others. And many of our majors are also double majors who have done work in basic science labs or innovative engineering projects alongside their English classes. In doing so, they have not only taken advantage of the resources of a major research university, but have also put themselves in a position to build bridges between different kinds of knowledge, different forms of value in our increasingly fractured world. And this graduating class has, of course, had far more to deal with than learning about iambic pentameter or Joyce's epiphanies. They've been confronted with crises and upheavals, both immediate and imminent. And I know I speak for my colleagues when I express our respect and admiration for the ways in which these graduates have persevered and even prospered in the face of many challenges. From you, graduates, we've not only learned new ways to read poems or write essays, but also lessons in resilience, ingenuity, empathy, and yes, bridge building. And it has seemed to me that you've turned to literature with perhaps a deeper hunger for answers, with a deeper hunger for answers than previous generations, and a salutary directness about the relationship between your own lives and the lives that you read about. To my mind, one of the greatest gifts of a university is that it moves slowly. It is designed to be a place where there's time to think things through, to contemplate words written long ago or far away. The world can seem very urgent these days, and such slowness sometimes seems frustrating. But one thing that I hope for these graduates is that they will be able to hold on to that ideal of slow and careful thinking, of carving out spaces for contemplation and reflection in a time that seems to demand ever swifter and sometimes unthinking responses. The college seniors on stage today are not the only people making big transitions at Duke English this year. For example, it's my last year as chair. This is my last graduation speech. Like our seniors, I started 4 years ago, and it's been a great honor to serve this generous and vibrant community. The students are heading out into the world, but I'll be staying here and returning to the faculty. And my excellent colleague, Priscilla Wald, will be taking on the role of chair as of next year. Several of our colleagues are also graduating into the next phase of their lives. Professors Rob Mitchell and Professor Victor Strandberg are retiring this year, and Professor Tom Ferrara will be retiring next year. Professor Strandberg has taught at Duke for 60 years. And you'll hear more about that impact in a few minutes. But over the past few weeks, those of us here in the English department have been privileged to hear tributes to these tremendous teachers and mentors. And one thing that I've been struck with is how often their students have described how these professors have taught them to find joy in literature. Not just to enjoy reading, but to find joy, which seems a different order of education entirely. It's one thing to learn dates or plot points or the names of literary devices. These are things a machine might do for us, though I don't recommend it. But it's quite another experience for a teacher to open new pathways in your brain, and perhaps even in your soul, that leave you looking at the world in a new way. This, I think, is something purely human. So since it's my last graduation speech, you'll indulge me in talking a little bit more about literature than I usually do. And let me say that these tributes that I've heard to the joy of literature have made me think about one of the most beautiful poems in the English language in a new way. Shakespeare's Sonnet 29. This is the one that begins, "When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I sit all alone and beweep my outcast state." And it goes on to describe how, when you feel profoundly discontented with yourself and with everything around you, remembering that someone loves you can bring you joy. "Haply I think on thee," the poet says, "and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate." It's a beautiful love poem, of course, but it also speaks to all the things that bring us joy. And what I keep thinking about when I think about that lark is how it doesn't keep its joy to itself, but it offers it back to the world in the form of song. And I hope for our graduates too, that what you've learned at Duke makes you generous and willing to share your thinking and your joy with those around you. Transitions are important, but they can also be hard. In Paradise Lost, Milton's epic poem based on the book of Genesis, I told you I was going to talk more about poetry than usual. Adam learns with dismay that he and Eve will be expelled from paradise. Dreading to leave what he calls their happy place, perhaps he's coining that term, he worries that all places else will inhospitable appear and desolate, not knowing us or known. Now, I'm by no means saying that Duke is or has ever been an Eden, but Milton's words speak more generally to the fear born of leaving a place that is not only familiar to you, but where you also feel known by the people and scenes around you. I hope that Duke has been such a place for you, even if the person that we have known is only the very beginning of who you will become. We have been glad to know you. But this transition, of course, is no expulsion. Our relationships will not end with graduation. We look forward to hearing about all that you encounter as you make your next steps in the world. You are always welcome to come back and to tell us about them, and we will always be very glad to celebrate them with you. One last thing. So you might be wondering why I am wearing red on this day of celebrating all things blue, and why many of my colleagues are also wearing non-blue colors. As is traditional for professors, I'm wearing the colors of the school where I earned my PhD, which in my case was Cornell University. And some of my colleagues are also wearing the colors of their own alma maters. The robes that I'm wearing, however, have a particular poignancy for me because they belong to my dear friend and colleague, Srinivas Aravamudan, who taught at Duke from the year 2000 until his untimely death in 2016. When I wear them, I think of him and of how much I learned from him. Today, and this whole weekend, will be a blur, I know, but I hope when you get a chance, you spend a moment thinking about those you have learned from and those that you have taught. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Undergraduate Studies, Professor Arti Vadi, who will say a few words and introduce our student speakers.
Hi everyone, welcome. First of all, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and those who mother in the room. I know this is a very proud day for you, and I know the amount of work your children have done to get to this day. But of course, the families and friends also do work, also support our students, and for that we are very grateful for you. I've taught at Duke for about 15 years now, and I've seen many undergraduate classes graduate into uncertain times. I'd be lying if I said that this moment wasn't perhaps the most uncertain that I've seen. But I also know that our English majors are prepared to weather this uncertainty better than most, and that is because of the work they've done over the last 4 years. They have learned the enduring skills of reading, writing, critical thinking, and respectful debate across Duke, but especially here in English over a variety of difficult texts. They know how to articulate complex ideas and to communicate sensitively about controversial topics. These used to be called soft skills, but if there's anything that I think this moment teaches us is that soft skills is within the wrong label. These are the essential faculties that we need as human beings to think for ourselves and to work in community with others. Our students have learned the art of asking good questions in complex situations in courses like Narrative and Moral Crisis and Gatsby's Great Rivals. They've found creative ways of thinking about urgent matters in courses like the environment and literature, law and science, and artificial intelligence and literature and film. They've also read deeply in period-specific courses on early modern literature, Victorian literature, and in author-focused courses from Shakespeare and Milton to Emily Dickinson, Toni Morris, and Bob Dylan. Most importantly, they have learned the art of making meaning for themselves in a world where information is abundant, but true knowledge still is hard to come by. So please don't take my word for it. Our best representatives are the students themselves, and I know that's who you want to hear from. So we have 5 speakers today from our graduating class. They will tell us what the English major has meant to them, and what one member of our faculty in particular, Professor Victor Strandberg, has given them as a teacher. So as Charlotte mentioned, Professor Strandberg is retiring, and I've not met anyone more dedicated to his students. I know that, speaking for everyone in the department if I can, it's been an honor to work with him. So I now am going to turn the mic over to our student speakers. We'll be hearing from Sophie Levinson, Lily Eagle, Trisha Santanam, and Anna Sorensen and Huda Hawk. So Sophie, would you start us off?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to all of our professors for everything they've done for us. We're very lucky to have you. And happy Mother's Day. Okay. In 1585, William Shakespeare was about the age of a graduating college senior. His life looked quite different from ours does today. By 21, Shakespeare was married and father of 3. He lived in a small town in the English Midlands, 10 years before the invention of the first flushable toilet in the UK. In just a few years, he would enter the London theatre scene and become England's most famous playwright. And strangely enough, we still read and perform his plays all over the world. Every student pursuing Duke's English major must take 2 classes in medieval to early modern literature, which usually means taking a course with at least some emphasis on Shakespeare. Personally, I took 4 of those. But when I first signed up to be an English major, this was the requirement which scared me the most. I thought I could understand novels much better than plays, modern and contemporary lit, more than anything written so long ago. I was wrong. Nothing that I've studied at Duke has been more resonant than Shakespeare's plays. To study Shakespeare is to study all those things which seem important to human life. And I don't just mean intangible things. His plays explore world history, political systems, and economies. English is far from the most popular major at Duke, as you can see. And most of us here today have been asked why we chose it and what jobs we think we can secure with it. But it's a silly question, because knowledge of Shakespeare alone is worth 5 degrees. Economics from Timon of Athens, political science from Julius Caesar, history from Henry VIII, criminology from Macbeth, psychology from King Lear. I could go on. Shakespeare's plays also examine what it means to love, fail, forgive, laugh, make ethical choices, and grieve. There's something lovely about the way that these plays from more than 4 centuries ago explore the same problems we deal with today. Shakespeare wrote about heartbreak and tyranny and revenge and loss and everything else really that people dealt with then and still encounter now. As English majors, it's important for us to study a variety of literature so that we can expose ourselves to different worldviews and a diverse range of experiences. But it's equally important to realize that people are people are people, all bound together by the commonality of the human experience. This is something which is difficult to put into words, but which we can perhaps understand by reading a Shakespeare play about the Prince of Denmark and feeling eerily in tune with his emotions. I'm a 21-year-old girl from South Carolina, and I love Hamlet. And that's a nice testament to the way that literature engenders empathy for people whose lives seem radically different from our own. By asking us to empathize with his characters, Shakespeare helps us to get to know ourselves. In college, we were supposed to figure out who we are and what we believe in, I think. These are really hard things to know. They're easier with Shakespeare. The thing about plays is that they're all about people doing and saying things, and thus they present their audiences with decisions and behaviors to think through, criticize, and understand. When we are challenged to think with and about Shakespeare's characters and to write on them, we are forced to come to conclusions about what right and wrong look like, about what motivates us, and how we might act in some of these situations. There's a Shakespearean philosopher named Stanley Cavell who has argued that the acknowledgement of others necessitates the acknowledgement of oneself. This is precisely the position in which Shakespeare puts his readers. Would you, like Hamlet, seek revenge? Would you, like Hermione in The Winter's Tale, forgive Leontes? Why do these characters behave as they do? How do people make choices? What would you do? I still don't know the answers to most of these questions, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. English majors tend to be really good at asking questions and thinking about them, but maybe not actually answering them. I am confident, however, that Shakespeare is going to serve as a sort of signpost for me as I go out into the world. At Duke, we've had so much social and ethical scaffolding. We have wise professors and advisors and upperclassmen to help us figure out what to do and how to act. I expect that knowing what is right will become a bit harder when we leave college and have to make choices about how we spend our time and with whom and what we want our lives to look like and so on and so forth. I expect that we will make a lot of mistakes and have some regrets, but also that, like many a Shakespearean character, we will improve and become better people all the way through our lives. We will have studied Shakespeare, and that can only help us. Congratulations to the class of 2026. I have loved being your classmate, and thank you so much.
Good afternoon. One of my favorite things about being an English major at Duke and the small size of the department that we have is being able to get to know faculty and have conversations with them outside the classroom. Recently, while chatting with Professor Julianne Berlin over lunch, she asked me if I had read any good novels lately. We got to talking about Frances Burney's 1796 novel Camilla, which we both think is a work of genius, which led her to recommend a book by Anthony Trollope, which then led to a conversation about the merits of listening to audiobooks while going on walks. The conversation was a delight. Of course, I talk with English professors about books all the time, but it's usually about books that were assigned for class, not books that I choose to read for fun. This led me to reflect on what I believe is the fundamental guiding principle of our English department, our love of literature and our belief that its study enriches our lives. This year, while working on my distinction project about representations of novel reading in 18th century women's writing, I began to think about the value of reading novels. Of course, novels are viewed very differently today than they were in the 18th century. When Jane Austen defended novels as works, quote, in which the greatest powers of the mind are displayed, in which the most thorough knowledge of human nature, the happiest delineation of its varieties, the liveliest effusions of wit and humor are conveyed to the world in the best chosen language, she was responding to a widespread belief that novels were worthless and dangerous to read. Many of the most prominent conduct writers of the 18th century had lots to say about how addictive and corrupting novels were, especially for impressionable young women. But today, the novel is esteemed as the greatest of all literary genres, and teachers and parents worry that young people don't read enough of them anymore. Interestingly, 18th century defenses of novels remain very relevant for our current moment, as we have to remind ourselves why it is worth it to read them when there is so much else to do and so little time in the day. Why read novels, and why do so when it isn't required of us? I would like to share a few gems from texts that I encountered over the course of my thesis research, which provides some insight into this question. The philosopher Mary Estelle writes that reading helps us to become the wisest and most knowledgeable versions of ourselves, that by educating ourselves through the study of texts, we open our minds to the recognition and contemplation of truth, which leads to the fruition of good in society. The novelist Maria Edgeworth suggests that novel reading enhances our relationships with others, that both the books themselves and the knowledge and wisdom gained from those books help to foster enjoyable discussions with our friends and partners. Meanwhile, the poet and literary critic Anna Barbeau focuses on the individual enjoyment and solace that novel reading can provide. In her 1810 essay on the origin and progress of novel writing, Barbeau writes, "The humble novel is always ready to enliven the gloom of solitude, to take man from himself, at many seasons the worst company he can be in, and, while the moving picture of life passes before him, to make him forget the subject of his own complaints. It is pleasant to sport in the boundless regions of possibility." Barbeau also writes that novel reading stores the mind with treasures which feed the mind with hope, compose it to resignation. She is writing here not only about the stories within novels, but also their eloquently written passages, the writing itself, which reminds us of the power of language to move and inspire us. Novel reading, according to Barbeau, is worthwhile for its own sake, as it provides consolation in times of trouble and amusement in times of tedium. While at Duke, life has been so busy that if I didn't dedicate time to reading for fun, I probably wouldn't have found that time. I've made a concerted effort to read often and widely, and I'm glad that I did. Taking advantage of the vast resources that Duke's libraries have to offer, as well as the beautiful reading spots on our campus, such as my favorite, the Duke Gardens, I've enjoyed texts from my wish list of historical women writers, including authors such as Dorothy West, George Sand, Amy Levy, and Sylvia Townsend Warner. I serendipitously picked up a book one day in the library just out of curiosity because its antique, musty spine caught my eye, and that book, The Prodigal Women by the overlooked and brilliant early 20th century American writer Nancy Hale, has since become one of my favorite books. I've learned that there are different types of reading, each valuable in different ways. There is the close reading that we do for class, where we delve into the workings of the text that we study and analyze what's happening on the technical level. Then there's the book club type of reading, which also entails observations and reflections and conversations, but are less focused on technical formal analysis. And finally, there is the reading that we do purely for fun, when it's just us, the books that we're reading, and our own thoughts. I've embraced each of these kinds of reading and learned to find space for all of them in my life. Novel reading not only teaches us about the world and helps us to imagine lives other than our own, it also enhances our lives by reminding us of the beauty and power of language and storytelling. We can't control the job market or the state of the world, but literature is always there as a resource to which we can turn, providing solace, reflection, and inspiration in times of uncertainty. And so, as we each journey beyond Duke to begin the next chapters of our lives, I hope that we will each continue to love literature, to learn from it, and to find meaning and enjoyment in the books that we read. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Anna and I are so excited to share with you all a little bit about our Duke English experience. So we first met each other our freshman year, a few months into the start of the year, in the undergraduate English lounge during what the department calls Third Tuesdays, an event where students and faculty gathered to catch up about life and classes over pie. We had both set our sights on the last 2 pieces of blueberry crumble, pointedly ignoring the untouched pecan pie. Congratulating ourselves on securing the precious slices, we began chatting, first about discussion posts in our classes, then about our first year random roommates, and true to our future English major selves, we gauged our friendship compatibility by testing each other about favorite books. Well, it seems our answers were acceptable enough to pass the final stage of inspection because we became and stayed friends over the past 4 years. My friendship with Anna was one of many that blossomed from conversations in the Allen Building. I'd spin Bob Dylan on the record player in the lounge and end up talking with another student about the songs they'd had on repeat all year. After classes on topics like American crime literature or African diaspora literature, the conversations inside the classroom would inevitably drift outside. We'd linger in the hallways, commiserating with each other about subpar TV adaptations and sequels to novels that, in our expert opinions, were deeply disappointing. I frequently left the Allen Building laden with a stack of books as tall as me and with essays with impending deadlines, but also with ideas churning through my mind and new friends to think alongside. I came to Duke knowing I wanted to be an English major, but my sense of what that meant was fairly superficial. I imagined the Duke English student as someone who, quite fittingly, might have appeared out of a novel themselves. A student who toiled alone in the library well into the midnight hour, a cup of coffee in one hand and a collection of Charles Dickens's greatest works in the other. 4 years later, armed with the knowledge gleaned from 22 Duke English classes, I know now that the study of literature, which is to say carefully attending to the various textures and voices within a text, does require a kind of sustained attention. And yet my conversations with Anna and so many other students, many of whom are here on the stage with me today, have made it impossible to imagine an English major as someone isolated in their pursuit of knowledge. In that sense, Duke English has helped us understand that the study of literature itself is a contradictory practice. It requires solitude, but it is never a solitary act. I have not come to understand literature better because I have spent my time here sitting alone and brooding, but because of friendly disagreements that complicated my interpretation of Flannery O'Connor's story, or a perspective that challenged the way I thought about musicality in the novels of Toni Morrison. Life, like literature, is predicated on fruitful and necessary contradictions. The world is not and should not be so easily understood. Characters and work of literature, like humans, are messy and unpredictable, but also generous and compassionate. It is precisely these very oppositional qualities that make them so likable and what allows their stories to resonate in the real world. Duke English taught us how to think along the grain of the productive tensions that the humanities invite. Literature heightens our experience of being human and reveals the many different, contradictory ways of perceiving the world. This embrace of contradiction is something that we will continue to carry with us. As a graduating class, our futures are taking different shapes. Some of us are pursuing graduate study in English and creative arts in New York and London, while others are teaching English in Paris or becoming journalists to report on their local communities. Some of us will wield our close reading skills to stick it to the man by working in the legal profession and pursuing JDs, while others will support vital research at the New York Stem Cell Foundation on Parkinson's disease. Although we'll be spread across the globe, pursuing different paths, we will always share the time we've spent together in the Allen Building, learning from each other, but especially from the department's brilliant and good-natured faculty. Whether I'm learning to preserve the wonder inherent in scientific writing from Priscilla Wald, or taking yet another class with Taylor Black on American popular music, I have honed my sense of thinking about literary studies as a field that invites contradiction. Duke English has cultivated our openness to dialogue and even productive disagreements, and I'm excited for us to carry that spirit of thinking and learning with others to the communities we are part of beyond Duke.
I've also found this across many classes, from David Ayer's Milton to Tom Ferraro's Madonna. I've learned to embrace contradictions and to bring compassion to complexity. But one of the first places I was able to really grapple with this was in a class that fell in between Milton and Madonna. It was in Victor Strandberg's class, Classics of American Literature from 1820 to 1860. Now, despite the mere 40-year time span, I can assure you that I have never tackled more content in a single semester. And I know this because I had to memorize it all, which I'm sure is something you didn't think you'd hear about at an English graduation. But welcome, let me introduce you to the rewards of a Victor Strandberg exam. Over the course of the semester with Strandberg, he will test your knowledge 3 times. Let me be clear, these tests are not sprints that you cram for the night before. They are marathons, which demand you spend the majority of your waking time leading up to the exam in deep philosophical meditation. So it's safe to say I got real intimate with transcendentalism that semester. And when thinking about how to honor somebody like Strandberg today, I wondered whether I may put some of this knowledge to use. I mean, how do you even conceive of properly honoring a person who has spent 60 years at an institution, has taught some 10,000 students, and yet still, in the words of a fellow English major, wants to know the story behind each student's brow? It's not to fault. So to narrow my focus a bit, I took a trip down memory lane and reread my 15-page study guides of terms and ideas for the exams I took. And re-encountering this content reminded me just how much Strandberg embodies and teaches students how to grapple with contradiction and the endlessly weird experience that is being human. I'd like to share some examples. Number 1, the unpardonable sin. This concept is one which we revisited continuously over the semester, particularly in our study of Nathaniel Hawthorne. Hawthorne defines the unpardonable sin as a want of love and reverence for the human soul. Strandberg, thankfully, put this in digestible terms, explaining that the analytical thinking which studying or reading about others demands must come from a place of compassion, of looking into someone else's heart, not with a cold curiosity, but with your own heart too. Strandberg taught us that intellect and heart are not opposing forces, but 2 ideals that studying literature requires us to unite. Number 2, I call this one darkness and light on the helm of a ship. Let me set the stage. It's about halfway through the semester, and we're a few weeks into studying Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Much like Ishmael in this moment, we are arguably on the verge of a psychotic break. One night, Ishmael stands watch at the tiller and he hallucinates this terrible vision of fire. When he comes to, he realizes that he has almost capsized the ship. And in response, he offers these words of wisdom. Look not too long in the face of the fire, O man. Believe not the artificial fire, when its redness makes all things look ghastly. Tomorrow, in the natural sun, the skies will be bright. Those who glared like devils in the forking flames, the morn will show in far other, at least gentler relief. Now, if you imagine Professor Strandberg reading these words aloud to you for the first time, it's pretty epic. More importantly, Strandberg used this example to teach us that there is always light in the darkness, that the sorrow, the terror which threatens to overwhelm us is but a shadow which the morning light washes away. Perhaps we should wrap up with some Walt Whitman, typical English major move. I'd like to bring us to one of the final poems Strandberg taught in this class. It's called Goodbye, My Fancy. The poem begins with just that, a farewell to a lifelong companion. But Whitman being Whitman, it's not that simple, and the poem promises an eternal union with its addressee, that the 2 will be blended into one and will remain forever one. As a testament to the relationship, Whitman declares, if we go anywhere, we'll be better off. And so the poem ends, goodbye and hail. It is impossible to say goodbye to someone who has had so much impact over 60 years of teaching, to someone who has ensured that we are all better off for having known him and for having learned from his example. And if we can have it both ways, if we can say goodbye and promise to greet each other again soon, then perhaps we should do just that. So, to a legend of the English department, to a personal source of inspiration for me, and to someone who has gifted us all the motivation to never stop learning, I offer these words of goodbye and hail. Thank you.
We still have yet more praise to shower Professor Strandberg with. So please, Huda, come for the last.
To echo Anna's beautiful words, there is a reason that the resounding response is always, "You're so lucky," when you mention taking a class with Professor Strandberg to either a Duke student or alumnus. If you've been in one of his classes, the routine is quite familiar. He first asks every student to jot down a little about themselves on an index card, and then arranges a meeting in his office. I had already heard a lot of great things, but sitting there in that sun-filled room overlooking the quad, the walls filled with an expertly curated collage of newspaper images, I saw exactly how special this class was going to be. During our meeting, he asked me about what it was like to grow up in North Carolina as a woman of color, about my experiences volunteering with vulnerable populations, about my career goals. He also asked what my favorite of his newspaper clippings was, and he took great deal of care to explain the historical context of it and why he had clipped it in the first place. His attention to detail, far surpassing that of many people my age, including myself, and genuine care were palpable from that first interaction. I saw that care carried through the classes I took with Professor Strandberg. These included modern American poetry and world literature. Each line and each passage were examined with a sharpness and a sense of humor that made the entire class lean in further, like we were unlocking a treasure chest of knowledge. Professor Strandberg revealed the details, the metaphors, the hidden meanings. In modern American poetry, his analysis made reading and understanding every line of The Wasteland fly by and stick in my mind for semesters after the class ended. He didn't only focus on the words on the page, he went beyond by transporting us into the historical locations that existed in the words. When we went over the Buddhist imagery in the fire sermon, he recounted his memory of a Buddhist monk self-immolating in protest of the Vietnam War, much to the class's fascination. This was characteristic of his teaching. In his hands, the texts we went over, no matter how many years ago they had been written, were still alive. Not only did he connect text to historical events, but he made sure to emphasize the moral weight of what we were reading. In world literature, he drew connections between Euripides' The Trojan Women, where children are killed for their ethnicity and whom they might grow up to be, and the atrocities of the Holocaust. He asked us to reckon with the parallel between ancient times and these more present ones. When we read of cruelty and saw how Montaigne wrote about the pain and suffering inflicted by humans on others, Professor Strandberg emphasized how this essay's message, written nearly 500 years ago, was still evident today all around us. In his classroom, literature was a way to confront and understand the world, never a retreat from the world or its injustices. His gift for transforming literature into the living, breathing art it should be bridged the gap between works from hundreds of years ago and every student he sat in front of. In times when we are so encouraged to just skim, to just read the bullet points, to just get to the main point quickly, being taught by Professor Strandberg was like an antidote. After 60 years, Professor Strandberg leaves behind both a body of scholarship and a way of reading and seeing that his students will carry long after they leave Duke. I am merely one of the thousands whose lives he has touched with his unrivaled amount of knowledge and experience. His presence and his instruction have helped transform Duke into a world-class institution today and impacted the lives of so many, both English majors like ourselves, non-English majors alike, across various continents and countries, by showing us all the value of pausing with these works of art and investigating them. He has shown the same attention and care towards every single one of his students as he has shown towards literary works. It is a very rare thing to encounter someone who makes you feel truly seen as a student, and rarer still to find someone who has done that thing for thousands of students over 6 decades. Professor Strandberg is that rare kind of professor, and Duke has been a much richer place for it.
So I will now read the names of the graduates. Rebecca Arian, co-winner. Co-winner of the Victor Strandberg Award for Excellence in Literary Arts. Sophia Lynn Berg, winner of the Barbara Bernstein Peace Award. John Ryan Cassidy. Taylor Marie Delgado. Lily Sage Eagle. Winner of the Stanley E. Fish Award for British and Anglophone Literature. Angeli Elizabeth Garibaldi Arias. Prisha Gupta. Huda Fatima Haq. William Frederick Perf. Samantha Hernandez. Tulsi Krishnan. Erin Isabel Lee. Winner of the most original honors thesis. Joshua Lee. Sophie Victoria Levinson. Carrie Pilar Lum. Sanjia Milton. Arya Devi Nanda. Noah Miyagami Obuya. Thank you. Megan Elizabeth O'Sullivan. Co-winner Victor Stramberg Award for Excellence in Literary Arts. Leah Simone Perlman. Elizabeth Kathleen Robert. Trisha Maya Santana. A winner of the Louis J. Budd Award for Outstanding Work in American Literature. And next, Anna Joan Sorensen. And last but not least, we have Maren Sloan Yearly. Please join me in congratulating all of our majors together.
Say one more congratulations and then we'll see them out. Congratulations to all. I'm going to leave you with one more literary quote in the words of one of our most intrepid heroines of literature, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. She says, "I remember that the real world was wide and that a varied field of hopes and fears, of sensations and excitements awaited those who had the courage to go forth into its expanse to seek real knowledge of life amidst its perils. Bon voyage, happy Mother's Day, and stay in touch." Congratulations, everyone. There's some refreshments outside, so we'll have more time to say hello. Again, congratulations.
Well, that's what I meant, all their films together.